Hello, so in this lesson, what I'm going to be focusing on is flowing text. So I'm going to go over some different ways that you can thread text boxes together. We'll be using paragraph styles again, and I'm going to be going over the baseline grid in this project. So go ahead and go to the Lesson 7 folder and open up the start file. Just update modified links. And it should open up this project here. Go ahead and go to Type, Show Hidden Characters. We're going to use those to help us format the project a little bit later. But next up is we're going to be working in the sidebar over here. So it's the text frame with the purple outline. And we're going to import text into it first off. So make sure you don't have anything selected. And we're going to go to File, Place. And go ahead and just grab that highlights document. Hit Open. And it should load your cursor up. And if I click in here, it'll fill the text frame and you'll see it gives us an overset error. We're going to fix that by grabbing our type tool and select everything. You can either select everything by hitting Command or Control A, or you can go to Edit, Select All. Either way, just make sure you have the entire text selected, and we're going to go to Paragraph Styles. If you can't find this panel, just go to Window, Styles, Paragraph Styles. And then we're going to go into this body text folder and just click on that little arrow so that way we can see all the options in there. And we're going to select sidebar text. And you should see it formats the text so that way it fits much nicer in that box here. But let's say I decide that I want to add in an extra line of text. So I'm going to grab my type tool and I'm going to put the cursor right before the P in plant. And I'm going to turn on caps lock. And I'm going to type in P's, comma, space, please. And then I'm going to hit enter so that way plant is on its own separate line. Now you can see we have the overset error again. Now we can either manually change the size of the frame here, or what we can do is we can either right click and go to text frame options, or we can go to object text frame options. Either way, it should bring up this menu here. Go to auto size, it's off to the left there, and change the auto sizing from off to height only. We want height in this case because if it changes the width at all, it could go into the margin and off the page, or it could go into our photo and we don't want that. We just want it to change up and down. So I'm going to hit height only. And make sure your reference point is set to this top center point, because when it's changing its shape, we don't want it to go up anymore. We just want it to go downwards. And this is just saying that the starting point is here and it will always expand downward. So once you have these settings, just hit OK. And then just grab your black arrow and deselect everything. Next up is we're going to go back over to page 1. So it's going to be the page with how to grow P's Please. And we're going to thread these text boxes together manually. We've already done this once before in the very first project on the postcard. So I'm going to make sure that I don't have anything selected. And I'm going to go to File, Place. And I'm going to grab this P's doc. I'm going to hit Open. And I'm going to click inside this frame here. And then with that black arrow, I'm going to go down to this plus sign here. You'll have to hit once to select it, then hit another time to load up your arrow. And then I'm going to click into the second text frame. And now these two frames are threaded together and the text flows from here into this one. All right, next up is I'm going to show you how to create frames and have the text flowing at the same time so that we don't have to keep going back and forth. Like in this case, we want our next set of frames to be in page 2, and it's just going to be easier if we can just stay on this page rather than having to flip back and forth. So with my black arrow, again, this is the selection tool. I'm going to load up my cursor. Again, you might have to select the frame and then click on the overset, but just make sure that your cursor is loaded up. And we're going to go down to page 2. And if I move my cursor up here, if I'm touching the margins, you'll notice that your cursor, the little tiny arrow, should turn white. Before you click down, hold either Alt or Option on your keyboard, and you should see your cursor change again. There'll be like a little swerving line arrow appearing. So with Alt or Option, press down on your keyboard. I'm going to create that first text frame in this column here. When I let go, it'll have automatically flowed all the text from page 1 onto page 2. So I'm going to do that one more time. I'm holding either Alt or Option on my keyboard. And then I'm going to make my frame. And I'm going to make sure I have that Alt or Option key held down the whole time. And then once I have my frame made, I can let go of the key. Now there's a second way to create text frames that are automatically just threaded together, and you don't have to manually make each one and make sure your cursor's loaded up. So I'm just going to hit my selection tool, which is the black arrow, and I'm just going to click out my pasteboard. That way I have nothing selected and my cursor isn't loaded up. And then I'm going to go over to page 3. So I'm going to grab my type tool, and I'm going to click up in this corner here, and I'm just going to start making a frame. But as I have it made, I'm going to hit the right arrow on my keyboard. I'm just going to hit it once. So that way it makes 2 columns. This is like when we were working with the grid of flowers in one of the previous projects. You can add rows and columns by just hitting the arrow keys on your keyboard. I just want 2 columns, and I'm going to drag them out so that way they fit into these 2 columns here. And now if I grab my selection tool and I load it up with text again, if I click into this first column here, you'll see it automatically flows from this frame here into the next one. So it just saves us a few clicks. All right, next up is we're going to create flowing text automatically. So go ahead and load up your selection tool again. Just click on this port down here, and then we're going to go down to page 4. And next is I'm going to go up to where these margins intersect, and you should see your cursor change from black to white. But before I click, I'm going to hold Shift, and I'm just going to click once, and you'll notice that it fills all the columns we have set on our document. That's why you might want to have columns built in with your margins rather than just going with one big one and pasting everything out yourself. If you've already got guides for it set up ahead of time, you can just do the Shift click and it will fill them up as need be. And if we go further into our document, you'll see it even added it to pages 6 and 7 as well. So you can see though that it did cause some issues where there are some pages where we just don't want text on them. That's okay with my selection tool. I'm just going to select the extra columns it made, and I'm just going to delete them. And you can see when I deleted this first column, it automatically shifted all the text over. So I'm going to do that for this over here. And then I'm going to go down to 6 and 7 and get rid of these 2 here. And if you see on the last page, there's still some more text. Okay, so you can see that right now if we go to the very last page, we still have an overset error. That's fine for right now, because what we're going to do is I'm going to go all the way up to page 1. And just with my type tool, I'm going to put my cursor in there, and I'm going to select the entire text. Again, just hit either Command or Control A, or just go to Edit and select all. But with all that text selected, we're going to go back to our Paragraph Styles panel. And we want to select Body Paragraphs. And you should see the text gets a lot smaller, and if we go to the very end, we don't have that overset error. So next thing I want to do though is I'm going back to page 4. And you can see that we have the issue where the text is bleeding over into our little sidebar here, or bottom bar. So just with my selection tool, I'm just going to select both of these text frames to select multiple objects. You can just either go into the outside here and then click and drag over them to select both of them, or just hold Shift and then click. And I'm going to just resize them. So that way the text frames are a little bit above the frame here. On the ruler off to the left here, you should notice that it stops at about 2.5. And then if you're looking at the coordinates on the page where it has your height and width, just make sure that height is probably going to be around 2.2. And then we'll have to go down to page 6 as well and resize these two text frames as well. So these, if you're looking at the ruler on your left, will probably be around the 3-inch mark. Just go a little bit above this block here. And then we're going to go back up to page 1. And I'm grabbing my type tool again. And I'm going to put my cursor in this very first paragraph here. And I'm going to select the drop cap option in my paragraph style, so that way the P gets really big. Make sure that you don't have a space or anything before P's. And then I'm going to go down to fertilizing, and I'm going to put my cursor in there. And I want that paragraph style to be body head. And you should see it gets bold. And then I'm going to put my cursor into the next paragraph after that, where it says when dairy dressing. And I want to change that to body paragraphs, no indent. And then I'm going to go ahead and find all of my subheadings and the paragraphs immediately after them and add those two paragraph styles. So the next one up is going to be sewing. I'm going to set that to body head. And then where it says over the dairy dressing, I'm going to set that to body paragraphs, no indent. So in this section, all of the paragraphs should be indented except for the very first one. So next one up is thinning out. Again, this line is going to be body head. And then the paragraph immediately after it is going to be body paragraphs, no indent. The next one up is protection from birds. And the paragraph immediately after that. Next one up is caring for the vines. And that paragraph. And then we've got picking peas. And then the last one should be follow crops. Okay, next up is we're going to be aligning the text using our baseline grid. It's also called a leading grid. What the baseline grid allows us to do is it represents the leading or the line spacing in our document, more specifically in the document's body of text, and it's used to align the baseline of a type in one column of text with the baseline of a type in the neighboring columns. So that way, no matter where the column is or how far up and down it's placed on the page, those lines of text should be continuing on the same line no matter what column it's in. So I'm going to go back up to page 1. And I'm going to put my cursor in this first paragraph here. And if you look at our leading value, right now it's set to 11 points. Again, your leading value, if you look in the control panel, it's going to be in that second column, the bottom drop down. If you hover over the icon, which is 2 A's stacked on top of each other, it should say leading. This is the reference it's going to use for creating the baseline grid. So go ahead and find your preferences. If you're on a Windows computer, it'll be under Edit Preferences Grids. If you're on a Mac, you'll click InDesign, Preferences, and Grids. Go ahead and find the section that says Baseline or Baseline Grid, and make sure Start is set to 0. And in Relative to, make sure it's set to top of margin. That way we're not looking at the page, it'll look at the top of these pink lines here. And then in the increment box, just make sure that's set to 11. That way it matches our leading. Alright, so this view threshold controls at what point we can see the grid. So right now the value is set at 75%. That's our minimum value. So what that means is if we have the magnification or the view set to 75% or higher, we'll be able to see the baseline grid. You can always check and see what magnification you're at by either going up to where it has your file name. It'll have like a percentage there. That's how much you're zoomed in, or you can go down to the bottom here and it'll be there as well. This doesn't really matter too much. What this does is it allows you to zoom out and see the project without all those lines breaking it up. But when you need to zoom back in and mess with fine little details, it'll bring the grid back up so you can actually see it. So once you have these settings down, just go ahead and hit OK. And you won't notice anything change at first. First, what we're going to do is we're going to go to View, Grids and Guides, and we're going to show Baseline Grid. That's just going to tell us where the grid is. We haven't actually set the text to it quite yet, but you should be able to see it. If you don't see it at first, you might have to either zoom in or zoom out to see it. So like if I zoom to less than 75%, so like right now I have it set to 50% magnification, you see the baseline goes away. That's what that view threshold was about. But if I zoom back in, it reappears. And next, with that cursor still in this first paragraph here, I'm going to go and select all of the text. And I'm going to go into my paragraph panel. So I'm going to go into Window, Type in Tables, and Paragraph. Make sure it's the paragraph panel and not the paragraph styles panel. It just should say paragraph. And if you go down to the lower right hand corner, you'll notice there are 2 icons. One of them is 2 columns of lines, but they're misaligned. And then the next one is the 2 columns of lines, but they are aligned with each other. Go ahead and select that second option. If you hover over it, it should say Align to Baseline Grid. And if you watch your text, you should notice that that text snaps down. So that way the bottom of the type is set to the line there. So this is just kind of another formatting function. Newspapers sometimes use this, look a lot. And then if you look in like encyclopedias and textbooks, each column is usually set to a baseline. So that way, no matter where you're looking on the page or where the column's placed, the text will always be fit to that baseline. So I'm going to go ahead and deselect everything. I'm just going to grab my selection tool, which is the black arrow, click out into my pasteboard, and just have nothing selected. Alright, next is I'm going to add a jump line page number. And basically that's just like a continued on page, whatever. So on this page 1, I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to go to this bottom right hand corner and I'm going to make a text frame. So I'm going to grab my type tool and I'm going to go to the edge of this text frame here to the right edge of it. And I'm going to make a text frame that is approximately 1.5 inches by 0.25. And again, if you can't get the measurements exact, just make a text frame. And then grab your selection tool, have that frame selected, and you can manually change the sizes up in your control panel. Just make sure that you have the chain link turned off. So I want width to be 1.5 and height to be 0.25. And then I'm just going to reposition this so that way that edge is with the right edge of the previous text frame and the top edge of the frame is budging up against this frame here. So I'm going to grab my type tool and I'm going to click in this text frame we just made. And I'm going to type in P's continued on. And I'm going to hit space. Make sure you put space in there. Then I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to special character, markers, and I want the next page number because we're saying it's continued on. We're not saying that it has the specific page number because that's up at the top part of the page. And in this case, since the next page is page 2, it's added a 2 in for us. So with our cursor still in here, I'm going to go over to paragraph styles and just scroll down until you see continued from to line. Select that. Paragraph style is probably going to be the last one on the list, and it should change all this text here. So go ahead and just close that up. And we are finished for this project. So you can go ahead and just turn it in on canvas.